had me at cello, cello. You had me at cello. You had me at cello. Oh, you had me at cello. Hello, everybody. It is that time again, 5 o'clock on a Friday. Hopefully, throughout the week, you've been making good use of resources online. There's zillions of them. And I hope they have included my website, You Had Me at Cello, the cello-related videos that I have, the most recent recital, the upcoming recitals, they're all listed on the website. And then the upcoming cello clinic on May 16th, available either virtually or in person. So those are ongoing efforts that I hope will be of use to you. But as you know, at 5 o'clock on Fridays, very special time to kick off the weekend, I get to talk to another cellist about what inspires them, what makes them tick, what they focus on as they practice, as they perform, etc. So I'm thrilled to have with me today Tomasz Rzeczycki. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Okay. Tomasz and I go way back and have had different paths in the past couple decades, but do stay in close correspondence, which has been a lot of fun. But for those people who don't yet know you, Tomasz, would you introduce yourself and tell a bit about your musical history and background?
Sure. Some of you probably can say that my name is I come from Poland, and that's where I was raised. I came to US when I was 27 for my master's degree and doctoral degree. My main reason why I started to look for further studies was that Poland at the time did not offer any graduate studies in music in the country. Nowadays, this is a little bit different, but that's what sort of triggered my search for further studies. In Poland, the system is a little bit different in terms of the music education, or at least was at the time. In Poland, I had regular school for 12 years, where I was 8 years in the primary secondary school and 4 years in the high school. And then simultaneously, I had 12 years of music education. There are two levels. There's first 6 years and then second 6 years. And this is more like because you get the professional paper after those 12 years, it's like a trade school. And so, like, for instance, my education was, initially, first couple of years are relatively easy because you have only a main instrument and a little bit of like ORF activities. And after 2 or 3 years, you get the secondary instrument for string players, usually is piano. But then toward the end of that first chunk of 6 years, you already get a little bit of introduction of music history, oral skills, sight singing, and everything related to more music theory. And then sort of the second chunk of those 6 years is actually much more intense because on average you get between 3 or 4 hours of activities afternoon, Monday, Friday. So like, for instance, you were getting 2 private lessons in cello, you were getting 1 hour of piano, you were getting 2 sessions of orchestra, you were getting chamber music and all these, music history, music harmony, sight singing, oral skills. So by the end, of the second 6 years, my music sort of life was pretty packed in terms of activities. But then, after that, I entered Music Academy in Krakow, and after completing my undergrad studies, I got sort of a little bit, I was itching for more. And that more happened to be in US because my music theory teacher, his son actually escaped from Poland much earlier, and end up to teach at the Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. And after completing the process with the application and recording, etc., I got admitted to Shenandoah Conservatory. And then after that, I got interested a little bit in a Suzuki training. And that's why I met Professor Phyllis Young. And that's what got me into the, after, of course, completing the process of application and audition as well, I got admitted to University of Texas. And that's where I met Dr. Whitcomb. But that's in a sort of short, I don't know if I'd be happy to answer more questions about this process, but that's how, at that time, nowadays schools which are sort of strong in terms of the music, they integrate everything together. So you don't have to go to the separate places like I used to have. I had regular school from, let's say, 8 till 3 p.m. And then from 4 till 7 or 4 till 8, I had music school. Now they pack everything in the one place with combining music and every other subject.
All right.
It kind of goes with the education in Poland at some point was geared sort of much earlier toward your major in a college in a way. Mm-hmm. I mean, those kids who were, and that's kind of the same in the high school. Like in the high school, you had to commit to the certain profile of your interest. So you were ending up either, for instance, in a biochem class with extra hours of chemistry and biology. Then same thing for people who wanted to go into engineering. So they had math and physics extensions there and so on. So that at that time, that was the model that was used.
All right. And tell a bit about where you are now and what you do presently.
I live in New Jersey. After meeting my wife in Austin, Texas, she got admitted to Princeton University, so we moved here. And I found a job as an orchestra teacher and instrumental teacher in a private school, Princeton Day School here in Princeton. And that's where I am for last 19 years. And I also have a successful private studio here in this area. So I teach. On average, I have about 16 to 18 students in my private studio.
Excellent. And you are like a number of cello teachers around the country, for sure. You are passionate about teaching, and it shows in the success of your students and your studio. What are some of the key points that you attribute your success to?
I would say that I'm trying to, of course, as a music teacher, we're not, I'm trying to tailor my style of teaching to individual needs of every student, because every student is different. But I'm also trying to do it in a such way that is interesting. I also, to be honest with you, I like to have fun when I teach. So I'm also making it quite entertaining. And I think through entertainment, you can actually achieve quite a lot of things in teaching. And so that's, I think, I found it very rewarding to teach, in such way that it's entertaining and interesting for the student. I don't want to bore them with things which will not help them to achieve the goal they want to do. So that's my main. And so far I've been very successful with I have students who, even recently I have students who went to college, but yet they still want to study with me. So. And that's like a second year. I was like, maybe you need to switch teachers. No, I still want to study with you.
Well, now, do you find that tendency that, for example, to be an entertainer, I think that as a performer, we are part artist and part entertainer. And I'm wondering if you would agree that conveying to the students this attitude of what it takes to engage the audience with the mindset of an entertainer can be a nice antidote to things like performance anxiety that can otherwise cripple a lot of young students when they get out on stage.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to. I had, in New Jersey, a lot of students, especially in high school age, they want to get into the regional or all-state orchestras, and of course, with that, we have the anxiety of the audition, and I do go through the relatively. Besides preparing the material for the auditions, I do actually practice with them psychology of the audition itself. So to the point where we do that different things, exercises where I'm trying to reinforce their focus, for instance, that no matter what happens around them, they're absolutely in a zone of their own performance and own quality. The quality comes first in this case, how they present. And I've been very successful with doing those things with my students, and they place every year. I have students who are placing in high positions in those regional and all-state orchestras.
All right. What do you have any secrets that you'd be willing to share about how you motivate students to reach for those high levels of playing and to do what you want them to do in the practice room to get there?
Well, I very often, give them my own example. When I was younger, I was never, number one, I never had a dream that I'd be studying in US. I even finishing undergrad in Poland in Music Academy, I was never expecting that I will end up, like for instance, at the University of Texas, and then I have an opportunity to perform. Of course, both the artists are deceased because it was Van Cliburn and Lynn Harrell, for instance. I never had a dream that one will be playing piano right next to me and Lynn Harrell is conducting Dvorak 8th Symphony, which thank God I knew very well because my orchestra from Poland used to compete with that symphony across the Europe. So I kind of had this thing memorized. But the same thing I'm trying to, in terms of the auditions, I'm trying to tell my students that there is no, because very often they kind of feel like there's always somebody better, and they play. Sometimes in orchestras, the tendency is to keep the students according to the year they are in a high school. So no matter how you play, you still start in the back of the section. So I always tell them, there's no better taste of being in the back of the section and outplaying somebody up front. that is the honey of of preparation there. I never, the opportunity came for me also that I was able to play in a White House 3 times. You never know in this business if you are in a good shape with your playing. I think karma comes toward you.
Yes, that's well said too. Now let's see. You also played in the orchestra that accompanied Pavarotti on a tour. Yes.
Yes, I was lucky with that as well. There was, as far as I know at the time, there was some kind of accident with the plane where the orchestras from Western Europe didn't want to fly anywhere, and they called Radio Symphony in Krakow, and even within that, some people still didn't want to fly. Of course, me being as a student, and I was like, how often will I go to Peru, and how often will I play with Pavarotti? Well, I don't have anything to lose, so I did sign up for that, and again, opportunity to play with him. I will always remember that. I mean, he was very, very friendly. They treat him there like a rock star. I think if he would like throw himself from the stage into the crowd, they would carry him all over the place. and that was one of the great experience of I mean, you could feel the sort of aura of his well, talent and also artistry in the singing when you were playing there.
I got to play in an orchestra under him once. I remember being struck by how when he would just, they call it marking, right? When he's saving his voice, it was a pretty ho-hum voice. And then he would turn on the real voice to try out the balance. And it was truly remarkable.
Yeah.
But he had a very different stage presence, didn't he? From, say, Lynn Harrell.
Yes.
Who was also very, very successful. They both were aware of the need to engage the audience, to be somewhat entertainer, to convey their artistic message. And you spoke of your own students' varied backgrounds. Do you, for example, what do you do, I should say, to adjust the route that you steer a student through to try and help them get to what is going to be their most effective stage presence?
Well, I showed them first that the way how they prepare, the way how they approach their practice time does matter, because it does accumulate in the end. If they are consistent, persistent, that is constantly adding to the quality of their playing. Of course, there is a big issue with an anxiety of performing something. And that's where the term of psychological warfare comes handy, because I do practice with them different things to simply reinforce their focus. I do have like several different toys around me in my studio, and we have a live lesson. And simply they play something, and I just randomly throw something on the floor. And the idea is to absolutely not even, blink. And I say, that's how it's going to happen when you go in an audition. Somebody will cough. You will hear somebody passing in the hallway. No, you absolutely have to stick to your guns. So when I say that we'll practice psychological warfare, they first of all, they have smiled, because they know that it's helping them in the end. And parents are also sometimes I do engage parents in that too, and I think they all have seeing the final result of different things we do in a lesson. I think they're all happy with the outcome.
So is there this thing that we have to do when we practice of repetition, sometimes for the endurance, sometimes for the muscle memory, but we don't want to repeat it in such a way that we start to sound either metronomic or robotic? And also if we try to do it only one way every single time, you lose some of that resiliency that you're talking about. So is there something that when you talk to students about how they are supposed to build up towards getting this 99%, for example, or 99 point something accuracy with a passage, how they're supposed to go about doing that ideally?
I do it. I do have a little bag at home with different dice in it. There are dice which goes up to 6, but there's also die which goes up to 100. So this is what I ask very often to students, because accuracy, in order to bring their artistry up front of any passage, we need to have accuracy present, because that's the base for anything. If you are secure with your playing, then next step is being artistic about it. If somebody's artistic and playing out of tune, then it's not going to, I think, pass. So students like this kind of activity because, number one, there's a luck involved, meaning it could be dice with a 6, but it could be dice with 40. And of course, then they have to roll it on the floor, and it's like, 11. Okay, I can survive 11. But then, 23, and they're like, but I say I didn't have anything to do with it. It's just, you know, you and your die. So, but of course, sometimes when I see that sort of security of playing comes before we hit certain repetition, then I say, okay, now it's a different level. We already know that you can play it. You proved it to yourself. You proved it to me that you can play it in tune. Now, what can we do in terms of being more artistic about it? Are we following the dynamics? What kind of vibrato are you going to use? In some cases, especially in the orchestra auditions, I do ask students to memorize the excerpts, and also within the orchestra, I also tell him, if you memorize that or excerpt and you can play it and steer conductor straight in the eyes, you will be the winner of that audition. Conductors like that kind of activity to show the confidence. And so, but the activity with the die kind of does not make me a villain in the whole situation. It's the student who is you know, exercising luck and whatever number comes there. But again, I've never had a student who, well, maybe there was one student who was a little bit overconfident on the 100. But in the end, when we both discovered that you know, there's a limit to it.
That's funny. All right, this has been really wonderful and fascinating, Tomasz. I wonder if you have kind of closing thoughts, either in the broad field of inspiration or motivation, or perhaps more specifically, the sorts of, whether it's been a particular recording or book or piece of music or something. What were some of your favorite sources of musical inspiration?
Well, I mean, from the beginning, I was always in love with Rostropovich sound. And like, for instance, it's a compilation of things, because as much as I'm involved with Rostropovich sound, I mean, I'm in love with Rostropovich's sound, I'm, for instance, more in love with technique of another cellist who's a little bit less popular, but equally, I'm definitely on the same level like Rostropovich, as Daniel Szafran. Mm-hmm. And I had a chance to have seen Daniel Szafran playing live, and twice, and that performance of Schumann Concerto and his solo recital will never get out of my head. Mm-hmm. And because of the presentation and the style and the command he had in playing the cello was, and I also have seen Rostropovich live, but I still remember till today the solo recital of Szafran, and so it's like a compilation. It's never like a single thing of I am crazy about recordings. I listen to a lot of music, not only classical, but what I'm listening, and that's actually what I got from Professor Young. I'm listening for that sound imagination. Mm-hmm. Like, show me what you can play with that individual note. I mean, nowadays we're at the stage where a lot of people can play the repertoire. But what do you do with the repertoire and how you present it, how you go about the phrase, or how you, you know, essentially it's about how artistic you are about. It's not about technicality. You know, technicality even from 20 years ago went so much ahead that you know, like we know, when I was you know, younger, playing Haydn concerto was like, you know, oh, big deal. Nowadays, you know, a lot of young people can play the Haydn concerto. It become, you know, like a more standard in a way repertoire.
Yeah, you mean the D major, right?
The D major, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you have a performance coming up next month.
I have a performance in with the orchestra, only strings. It's going to be an outside, but it's kind of like an under the. It's kind of like a pavilion type performance, and So that's the first one since I think last one. I had one in last year in April, but that was a streaming performance of the string ensemble. I am itching a little bit because right before the pandemic, I was like week before playing my own recital, which didn't happen, and I'm like more and more kind of getting into the point where I need to play something because I need it. I simply need to feel the instrument, the vibration, and excitement of playing for somebody and with somebody, and on a stage.
Hear, hear. All right. Well, thank you very, very much, Tomasz. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thanks for watching, viewers. Next week at this same time, we will, as my guest, I will have Dr. David Luttrell. So you'll want to tune in for that too. And in the meantime, I wish you happy practicing.
Happy practicing. Thank you.